Greetings all, this is Nick from Those Hairy Gamers here with Justin from Those Hairy Gamers. How are you?
I'm doing great, man. Yourself?
Yeah, doing really well. We're back to do another list review videos. We haven't done anything for the Rebels yet, Justin.
No, that's because neither of us are Rebel players.
No, we're not. However, I do appreciate a lot of good Rebel lists.
There's some really cool Rebel lists out there.
If I had more time and money and I did invest in another faction, I would go into Rebels.
Yeah.
Probably because they're like the most scum-like faction that aren't scum.
Yeah. So, yeah, no, I think I'd go Rebels as well.
No,
Yeah.
not a scum man.
Nah, not scummy enough.
You'll get there eventually, man. We all get there eventually. So today we're going to look at an archetype known as Fair Ship Rebels. I just spent a bit of time researching why exactly it's called Fair Ship Rebels, and the best answer I can come up with, and if you guys know this, let us know in the comments, is that it was originally a 4-ship build, and then they kind of renamed it eventually to Fair Ship Rebels.
Yeah, my thought was that while the ships themselves are fair, together they are not.
They are unfair, pretty much. And that makes a lot of sense. It feels like, it's that classic thing. Well, these ships are greater than the sum of all their parts. And indeed, that's very, very true here.
Yeah.
It's taken a few different forms as the zeitgeist of the meta moves forward. These days, it seems to be most commonly flown with Lauric on the archetype gunship, Captain Rex on the TIE Fighter, Jess Pava on the T-70 X-Wing, and Biggs on the X-Wing. Basically, that Biggs and Captain Rex combo was the first thing to put in this. The list has had at points Miranda. It only recently got Lauric, obviously because he only came up a couple of months ago. But basically, that core strategy of using Biggs and being tanky and defensive whilst jousting with 4 ships is what's going on here. Yeah. It is brutal to joust against. I have never jousted a Fair Ship Rebels list and won.
Okay.
Basically, you have to find a different strategy or you'll pretty much lose every time. Yeah. It's the meta list which is taking tournaments these days. It's really taking it to Scum, which is good because Scum have had a very, very long dominance in the meta. So it's really cool to see.
And they're about to get another good ship.
Yes, and it's also worth noting that 12, yep. Yeah. Sorry, we're losing track because they keep announcing stuff. Wave 12 is going to have
Tomorrow they're announcing Wave 14.
Of course they are.
Yeah.
In Wave 12, we're getting Fen Rao on the Phantom 2. I think this is going to slot into this fantastically. If we take this basic build, I think Fen Rao instead of Jess Pava is going to be nuts. The utility, the handshakes between these guys is bonkers, pretty much.
It's disgusting.
Absolutely. So basically, to qualify for a Fair Ship Rebel build, I feel very strongly that it must include either Biggs or Lauric. And indeed, I looked through all of the lists that you guys submitted and took everything that used at least 3 ships and used either Biggs or Lauric. And that's the qualifier. I said, okay, these are variations on Fair Ship Rebels. You might not feel like they are, but just for the sake of having a nice, neat video with a nice group of builds, that's what I've done here.
The first squad build we've got here is from Royatracy, and they've got the Arc 170 with Shara Bay, with M9G8, Draw Their Fire, Weapons Engineer, and Alliance Overhaul.
Next we've got Bodhi Rook on the U-Wing with Sense Jammer, Jan Ors, and Pivot Wing.
And finally, we've got Lauric on the Azatak gunship with Selflessness, Jin Urso, and Breach Specialist.
So this is very interesting because we have a lot of target lock utility in this build. Bodhi Rook lets any of your friendly pilots lock onto any ship that's in range 1 to 3 of any of your friendly ships. Now, I don't love that ability because if you're flying this Fair Ship Rebel style, you're probably going to fly them in formation, which means you're not getting a lot of use out of that ability. You're only getting a little bit more reach with those target locks. But it's still a cool ability, and that might not be the way that you're flying it, so I'm not going to make any assumptions there. On Shara Bay, who lets anyone else spend her target locks, which is really cool, we have Weapons Engineer, which means we can take 2 target locks at the same time. And comboing that with Bodhi Rook means we have a lot more reach and we have a lot more different targets for that.
Yeah, that's kind of cool.
And we've also got M9G8, which means you can lock your friendly ships and get the utility out of that. Basically, M9G8 says, when a ship you have locked is attacking, you may choose 1 attack die. The attacker must reroll that dice, and you can lock friendly ships. Ooh. So you can increase the efficiency of your friendly ships or decrease the efficiency of your opponent's ships, which is quite cool. So lots of target locks being passed around. I think for this to be a slam dunk, I'd like to see better use of the target locks.
Yeah.
You've obviously gone for this utility, getting lots of target locks passing around, blah, 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 but what's your end game? What is your win condition for this list? It's a great gimmick, but I'd like to see ordnance, for example. If you've got lots of target locks, it means ordnance is very easy to get off. You could consider, for example, putting neurodentals into your list so you can fire a big, juicy torpedo in any direction and get some great utility out of that. Ooh. If we're using target locks, I feel like you need something like this to capitalize on it. That's kind of what I'm thinking here.
Yeah.
Having said that, it's very tanky.
Yeah, very tanky. The sensors jammers, I'm not 100%. It just seems that it's very defensive. I'd like to maybe see fire control systems, maybe.
Yeah. I feel like if you had fire control systems, I feel like Bodhi Rock's probably doing a bit more work. I know you're going for the ultra defensive build, but having fire control systems... I mean, look, fire control systems is an amazing card. It's well worth its 2 points, often worth way more than 2 points. And I feel like, yeah, a sensor jam is cool, but for the 4 points protecting that ship, I don't think it's doing enough work in the list. It's also worth noting that on Lauric, you have Jin Urso. Now, that's cool on Lauric. The only issue is, as an action on Lauric, you generally want to take that Reinforce, so you can use his ability. Now, you could put Experimental Interface on Lauric, but you haven't allowed enough points in your build to do that. That's another reason to take Fire Control System over Sensor Jam on Bodhi Rook. If you go down to Fire Control System on Bodhi, then you can put Experimental Interface on Lauric. And that means you can reinforce and use Jin Urso's ability. Jin Urso is fantastic on an Ozatech gunship.
Yeah.
Basically, for how many enemy ships you have in your firing arc, you net that many focus tokens onto a friendly ship. Jan Ors is also in the build, so one of those could be an evade token. Oh. The Ozatech has a 180-degree arc, so he can net a lot of bad guys in his arcs. That's the whole idea. There's lots of cool stuff going on there. I feel like if you use the fire control and the experimental interface, you've got enough attack power to then sort of say, okay, now my list can actually joust. Now my list can actually push through the damage to win me games.
Yeah.
You're going to play long games with this, but you don't want to ultimately lose the long game. You have to have some kind of win condition that can push your list forward and win you a game. Next up, we have a list by Luca Cotroneo. Cotroneo? I hope I said that right. It has Poe, Biggs and Lauric. We have the PS9 version of Poe Dameron in his T-70 X-Wing with Intensity, BB-8, Prime Thrusters, Auto Thrusters and the Black 1 title.
We have Biggs Darklighter with R2-D2 and Integrated Astromech.
And Lauric in the Ozatech gunship with Selflessness and Wookiee Commandos. So this is interesting. We've got the Lauric Biggs combo.
Yeah.
They're holding hands around the battlefield. They're having a good time. But we've got PS9 Poe with BB-8 and Intensity.
Yeah.
That's not the kind of thing you usually fly in formation. But that doesn't bother me too much.
No, I kind of like having the BB-8 in there.
Yeah, it's a bit of fun. I mean, often Poe is flown with R2-D2, but obviously there's no more points in this. This is a 100-point list, so you can't fit anything else into this. I mean, I really like BB-8. It's flavorful. Poe's doing a lot of stuff. It's helping with Black 1. It's zipping around like a mosquito. And I like the idea that you could have, say, your 3 ships flying in formation together, but then, like, say, halfway through the game, Poe just peels off and starts doing his Poe Dameron stuff.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's the risk. If you're not putting R2-D2 on him, you're not getting the regen, so he might be a bit squishy.
The problem is, though, if you do put R2-D2 on Poe, that's a very heavy...
It is. Yeah. He's already 41 points. That pushes him up to 43 points.
Yeah.
I don't like 41 points, let alone 43 points.
Yeah.
Hey, if you love flying a big, fat, heavy Poe and you can make it work, why not? What we could do here, and this is just an idea, I don't think this is demonstrably better or worse than what you're suggesting, but you could put R2-D2 onto Poe, push him up to 43 points, and instead on Biggs, we could put on R4-D6, which is something I hate flying against.
Yeah?
Basically, if you hit Biggs for more than 3 hits, he can take all these stress tokens to knock it down to a maximum of 2 hits instead.
Oh.
It's stressing out Biggs, but I hate that I can't hit him for 5 in one hit.
Yeah.
I've flown against this many times with like 2 big bounty hunters like Boba Fett and Asajj. I hammer Biggs as hard as I can, but I cannot one-shot him. And that way he stays on the board.
Yeah.
Another round of shooting with Fair Ship Rebels, GG. You're just having a real bad time.
And that then also brings you down to 99 points.
It does, and I feel like 99 is better if you have PS9 Poe.
Yeah.
You wouldn't use that point, you just use it as an initiative bid.
Yeah.
Which is quite good. It's a 43-point Poe, which is a lot more than I'm comfortable doing. It's
Yeah.
cool. You could do Miranda instead, and arguably Miranda is more comfortable around the 40-point mark. But you do you. If you want to stack a heap on Poe and just zip him around the battlefield, and if you can arc dodge with that Poe, props to you, man.
Yeah.
Get it done.
The next one is from Abdiel Capote. He has Lauric on the Azatat gunship with Calculation, Ray, and Inspiring Recruit.
Next we have on the Y-Wing Dutch Vandar with a TLT, R3A2, and BTL4 Y-Wing title.
And we also have Nora Wexley on the Arc 170 with Adaptability, Tail Gunner, R2D2, Vectored Thrusters, and Alliance Overhaul.
This is cool. This is actually one of two lists we had submitted that had Lauric, Dutch, and Nora. And I like the way that Dutch and Nora interacts. I don't love these upgrades, though. I've got to be a bit critical here. Because, for example, on Lauric, we have Calculation and Ray, and that's a very cool combo.
Yeah.
Calculation and Ray means Ray can stack up all those focus tokens, and then we can capitalize on it with Calculation. You can spend a focus token to change one eyeball to a critical, and then later in the game, you might even get the chance to spend that and a regular focus in the same attack, which means you can convert a whole thing. However, he's only got 3 red dice. I feel like that combo is great if you have a lot more red dice. You're upping the chances of getting more than one focus result.
Yeah.
You don't have a whole heap with just 3 red dice. It's very common that you'll just roll 1, and then you get no value out of the extra focus token. You can make the argument that, yeah, Ray's hoarding the tokens early on, so then Lauric can use his ability. I don't love how you have a focus action combo on Lauric.
Yeah.
Because Lauric just wants to reinforce. Every turn, he just wants to reinforce.
And you've also got Dutch being a stress bot build as well, which seems a bit weird.
Yeah, Dutch is really cool. Dutch has a great ability, and of course the stress bot, we know what that does. TLT, R3A2 and the title means you can double tap the stress bot, lock down something. The problem is you've upgraded that build to instead have the Gold Squadron Y-Wing, you have Dutch Vandar. And Dutch Vandar wants to take target locks to use his ability. He can't do that if he has stress tokens on him, and that's a big problem.
Yeah.
So you've either got to use his ability early on and then just take the stress cloud and GG, never use his ability again, which doesn't feel good.
No.
I would rather... I mean, you're going for... You have the choice in this build. I understand that. However, you've invested points on this strategy and you've invested points on another strategy. And ultimately, the points you've invested on one of those strategies will not get their use.
Yeah.
And that's bad because you've invested points that you're not going to use. So from that point of view, I don't like these two builds. Nora Wexley's fine. Adaptability, Tail Gunner, R2, Vectored Thrusters, Alliance Overhaul. It's a good, solid build on Nora. And with Dutch, that's doing a lot of work. However, if you're not using Dutch's ability and you use the stress bot, you've lost that symbiosis.
Yeah.
So I love the idea of what these ships are trying to do. I just feel like these upgrades don't quite capitalize on it too much. Which brings us on to our next list, which also uses Nora and Dutch. This is from General Gru. Nora Wexley has pushed the limits, C-3PO, R2D2, the droid buddies together, Vectored Thrusters and Alliance Overhaul. Biggs has R4D6 and Integrated Astromech.
And Dutch Vandar has Sync Turrets, M9G8, Vectored Thrusters, and BTL A4.
Cool. So, looking at this already, I feel like this is probably a better version of what we're trying to do here. Biggs has R4D6, and as I've said before, it's a nuts combo. I mean, yeah, you can do R2 and get the regen, but you put R2 on Nora, and that's also fine.
Yeah.
One or the other, either of those ships being tanky is good. And the great thing is, as you said in your comment, Mr. General Gru, you want to keep Nora alive for the late game. R2 is going to help you do that. So is C-3PO, actually. That's a great combo. R2 and C-3PO. It's very expensive. It's 7 points for the combo, but it's doing a lot of work. Now let's take a look at the Dutch build, because I like what you've done here. Sync Turret, M9G8, and Vectored Thrusters. Now, M9G8 is a double utility card. You can use it to boost your own attacks, or nerf your opponent's attacks by target locking either a friendly ship or an enemy ship.
Yeah.
Because you have Sync Turret, you're pretty much always just going to lock your opponent's ship.
Yeah.
So you've lost half the utility in M9G8. Is that still worth 3 points? I'm not sure. if you lock them and fire at them with a sync turret, you're going to fire at them with a pretty good attack, and they're going to fire back at you with a nerfed attack, which is quite good. So even though you've lost a bit of utility there, I still quite like it.
No,
With BTL A4, you get the sync turret shot and a regular primary shot. And with Dutch Van Dar's ability, you get to give Nora a free target lock. So this is what I'm talking about. This build, while maybe not being the nuts combo, is great with Dutch Van Dar's ability. Yeah. And I quite like this. There's not much to say about this list. I really like it.
It's a good...
It's 3 solid ships. Yeah. I mean, the issue is if you happen to get to the late game with only Dutch Van Dar, you're not having a great time. But even so, he can still joust. Yeah. He can still joust. I mean, you have to make sure you're getting those target locks and maybe your opponent locks you down with stress. But if you're left with just Biggs or just Nora, there's no really bad situations. And I guess the worst thing is here is if you lost Nora first, but you've put C-3PO and R2-D2 on it. Even though this ship cost way more than the other ships, you've made it more tanky.
Yeah.
You've thought about this issue of the ships being unbalanced and you've addressed it really well.
Yeah, I like it.
I like this list a lot.
And finally, we have Patrick Murphy. He's got a list with Corran Horn, with Push the Limits, Fire Control Systems, and R2-D2.
We have Lauric in the Azatec gunship with Selflessness and Wookiee Commandos.
And we finally have Biggs with R4D6 and Integrated Astromech.
So this is very similar to that Poe build we were looking at before. We have Lauric and Biggs doing their thing, having a good time. In fact, just bringing up that Poe build now. No, we don't have the same draw on Biggs. Instead of R2, we have R4D6. And there's an obvious reason for that. We need more points to spend on our other ship. That's why you've done that.
Yeah.
R4D6, as I said, still a great option. It's so annoying to shoot. And alongside Lauric, again, we could have the same strategy as that Poe build where you fly these 3 ships in formation. And you wait for the right moment, and then you peel off with Corran Horn.
Yeah.
Corran Horn and Poe Dameron pretty much doing the same kind of thing. They're both very maneuverable, very powerful. Corran Horn, arguably in the meta, the worst ship out of the two of them. Yeah. Maybe not quite as good as Poe. Doesn't have quite the utility Poe has, but still a really, really cool pilot. Push the limit fire control systems, R2-D2. Certainly as a more casual pilot, Corran Horn's a lot of fun to fly. It might not win you tournaments, but you're going to have a good time with it. And again, I just like that basic concept of having Biggs and Lauric with one 40-ish point ace. It's just solid. There's not much to say about it. No. I quite like it. And Mr. Murphy, I see you took this to the Canadian Nationals. Please, in the comments, tell us how that went. Yeah. I want to hear this because I actually want to see how people are doing with Corran. Corran is such a cool pilot, and I'm quite sad not to see him get played. I mean, we know Nathan and I took the American Championships the other month at Gen Con, but that's Nathan and I. That's not.
He is the E-wing flyer.
Pretty much. That's not a fair barometer of how well the E-wing's flying. Yeah. But it is cool to see it get flown, and I would love to see more of it. And I like this list. There's not much more to say about it. It's really cool.
Yeah.
So thank you for all those submissions on the Fairship Rebels build. Keep those coming in. Fairship Rebels is a nuts build currently in the meta. It's going to do well as long as you have a list that utilizes these pilots and you have good utility upgrades. Make sure they combo nicely with their pilots. You're going to have a good time and they're going to be competitive.
Yeah, and I feel like they're only going to be getting better.
For the time being, especially with Fenrir coming out, it's going to be something to watch out for sure.
Anyway, guys, like and subscribe and like us on Facebook, and we'll see you later.
See you guys.